In today's lesson, we are going to be looking at effective surveys. So, we've looked at how to represent data. We're going to be looking at now one way to collect data, which is a survey. And we're going to look at just some of the characteristics of a good survey, some things to be mindful of when you're creating them, and so on. So, statistics from survey are only accurate if two conditions exist. So in order for the statistics or the data from a survey to be accurate, they must be reliable, which means they can be replicated and generate the same results. So basically, if I was to repeat the survey again, would I get the same results? Now, they don't have to be statistically, or not statistically, they don't have to be identical values, but statistically speaking, are they the same? The surveys must also be valid, which means whatever you're setting out to measure, that is what the survey actually measures. So you're not finding additional information or other things, you're finding out what you're supposed to measure. So when designing questions to ask, there's a couple things you want to think about. Who is the survey for? So who are you creating the survey for? Who is it geared to? Teens, adults, animal owners, sports enthusiasts, right? Something along those lines. Because again, who you're gearing your survey towards can determine the types of questions, the wording, things like that. What is the purpose of the survey? So what is your goal? Kind of goes back to the validity. What are you trying to measure with this survey? Right? Is it a personal evaluation? Are you looking at product marketing? Are you just trying to gather information? Things like that. Are you trying to look at satisfaction rates? Things like that. Are the questions open, closed, or both? Right? So an open question would be something where you answer in your own words. Right? So it might be describe your experience at this restaurant. Right? There's no scales or anything. It's not multiple choice. You just can type in whatever you'd like. Almost like writing a review. So you answer in your own words. Now, these types of questions, it's tougher to interpret data from because you would have to read the individual responses. You would have to kind of then interpret that or put that or apply data to it to then make it more usable. Right, so it might be questions that are where you answer freely, you fill in the blanks, right? So what is your favorite type of music? Might be something like that, but instead of giving options, it just gives you a space to type it in. Closed questions. The closed questions are where you are given the choices, right? So it might be a multiple choice question. It might be something that's dichotomous, where there's only two choices, yes or no. Things like that. A rating scale where you have a specific value or specific values that you can pick in order to determine a rate or for something. So again, those are the types of questions that you might have to come up with. And again, that could come down to what's the purpose of the survey and who is the survey for. Proper surveying. So there's a couple things you want to think about in terms of proper surveying. One is ethics. So when you have a survey, you should have an introduction with information about the purpose of the survey. Those individuals that are completing your survey, they should know what you plan on using the information for or what your goal is with the information. Right? What is the purpose? What are you trying to collect? What are you trying to measure? The respondents must be willing participants. So again, you want to make sure that no one's forced to complete the survey. Because if you're forced to complete the survey, then that can affect possibly the results, your answers, things like that. The information must be confidential. So you shouldn't be sharing the information or the results or a participant's answers with anyone else other than the group that's doing the survey or those that are interpreting the data. Right? Because again, you want to make sure that people answer truthfully. And if they have any suspicion that their information is going to be leaked or given to someone else, or other people are going to be able to view it, they may change their answers to suit what they feel the other person or the people may want. And we'll look at examples like that later on. But again, it must be confidential. So again, this is all things that you have to ensure that the participants are aware of prior to them completing the survey. Proper surveying, again, designed for honest responses. So again, the answers are anonymous and confidential, so you need to ensure that the participants' information, their names, who they are, does not get attached to their answers. Now, there may be some things that you might ask, such as age, gender, salary, or like living locations, things like that. You may ask those questions if that is part of your survey. If you're trying to figure out, like say, what age groups prefer certain types of music, or how much do certain age groups spend on I don't know, on food or something like that. So depending on the situation, you may ask things that give us information about the people or the participants, but it's not their specific information. It's not like their names, their actual addresses, their like their credit card information, their SIN number, things like that. You wouldn't be asking for things like that. When you have choice questions or multiple choice questions, including options such as other, or I don't know, or not applicable. So that gives people an option to answer if one of the four possible answers isn't one that suits them, right? So making sure they have an option to have their response or to give an accurate response. Clear rating scales. So when you have a rating scale, what number means the best? What number means the worst? Right? What number represents extremely satisfied? Is that a 5 or is it a 1? Right? Make sure that it's a clear rating scale. And then makes it easy to continue with more difficult and sensitive questions near the end. Right? If you start off a survey with very difficult or very sensitive questions, things that might make people uncomfortable, it may hinder them or cause them to not want to continue with the survey. And you want to eliminate bias. So another thing, with proper surveying, you want to eliminate bias. And again, we'll touch on bias a little bit more in depth later. But for right now, to eliminate bias, you're looking to do things such as posing clear questions. So approximately how much time have you spent on the internet recently? Right? So again, recently would indicate today, the previous day, this week. Right? Maybe you might be specific. Approximately how much time have you spent on the internet this week? Things like that. Right? So to allow to give accurate responses. Avoid leading questions. Do you think Mr. Liu is the greatest teacher ever? By having that phrase, greatest teacher ever, in there, kind of leading you to the idea of I'm the greatest teacher, right? So it's already put that in your head. Even just by putting the wording in there, you may not think that it actually influences you, but it might. It might influence someone, right? So you want to be careful about how you word things. Irrelevant questions. As a pet owner, how many days a week do you eat ice cream? Right? Being a pet owner shouldn't have an impact on how many days a week that you eat ice cream, or it doesn't. There's not usually, or it's irrelevant that you're a pet owner, or it's irrelevant that you eat ice cream. Right? You can simply ask, how many days a week do you eat ice cream? Right? Or are you a pet owner? You don't necessarily need to have them in the same question. Neutral environment and anonymous, right? So you want to make sure that it is anonymous so that people feel comfortable giving appropriate answers. So if I were to ask, raise your hand if you hate math, right? A lot of people may not feel comfortable raising their hand in a math class saying that you hate math, right? Especially telling your teacher. You may not feel comfortable doing that because maybe you feel it will have a negative effect on your mark going forward. Things like that, right? So you just want to be careful about ensuring that it's neutral, it's anonymous, the questions are relevant, they're not leading, and they're clear. And then from there, we will go into a survey assignment. But again, the main thing is just looking at an effective survey or looking at characteristics that can help us create an effective survey. Is every survey going to be 100% perfect? No, there's always going to be small little things. It's just inherently the way it is, right? There's always going to be some bias, whether it's intentional or unintentional. But the idea is that we're going to do our best to create a good survey that eliminates as much bias as possible and ensures that we kind of follow some proper ethics when surveying. So again, the main thing is just understanding or just looking at these different characteristics. So when we do create a survey in our assignment, we should feel comfortable or should feel like we're producing a good survey that will give us accurate data.